Welcome to Firmer Ground from SRM, where we explore trends and strategies impacting the current and future state of financial institutions in North America and across the globe. My name is Neil Doherty, host of today's podcast and Managing Director of Global Marketing at SRM. Every episode features experts from the world of banking and financial services, including thought leaders here at SRM, executives at future-thinking financial institutions, and other experts from all corners of the industry. In this episode, I speak with SRM's artificial intelligence subject matter expert, Connor Heaton, on the topic everyone's talking about, OpenAI's ChatGPT, and similar large language models. Following a surge of investment and interest in AI tech and startups, Connor explains how it all works and why the financial service industry is taking notice and onboarding these tools for internal and external functions. Even if you're new to the world of AI large language models, you'll enjoy the information and insights Connor provides. So let's get started. All right. Hi, everyone. Neil Doherty here, Managing Director of Global Marketing at SRM. And my guest today in the studio is Connor Heaton. And Connor is the VP of Advisory Services here at SRM, and he's highly focused on delivering high-value strategy and action plans related to next-generation technology for our clients in the financial services industry. More specifically, Connor leads all delivery related to AI solutions and intelligent automation. So happy to have Connor here today. And prior to joining, Connor was a technology strategy consultant at Deloitte and is a graduate of The Ohio State University. And today we're going to discuss Connor's deep dive into AI platforms like OpenAI's ChatGPT, also known as large language models, and how they're impacting business at large and financial institutions across North America and the globe. So welcome, Connor. How are you?
Thanks, Neil. Doing well. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you today. So we'll just kind of jump right into it. Obviously, this is an exciting time for AI solutions, and I know you've taken on the brunt of our coverage and perspective here at SRM, including the recent Tech Talks presentation that you've done. So, which I should note is also available on our YouTube channel, and check that out. But I want to start with a question that's been on my mind, which is, why are AI solutions so attractive to businesses at large right now?
Sure. So most of it is the same draw as really any automation has ever been for business. The bottom line, right? Doing things more efficiently, quicker, and more cheaply. And this sort of automation has been available in one form or other for a long time, but it's been very specialized for a lot of these sorts of capabilities, or it's cost a lot to implement. And so, in a sense, the spread of large language models and the democratization, the accessibility is a huge part of the current sort of revolution. And it's the business interest in it is in making new kinds of tasks possible, cheaper, and more available to automate. The rest, I would say, outside of that, comes down to what the accessibility of automation means for the future of work. When you can complete an audit or complete a targeted marketing campaign or a review process, basically instantly and for a negligible cost, how does the world look different? Do we have audit review cycles now continuously instead of being every half year, every year, where there's just a real-time connection to internal audit or even to external audit bodies? If we take this one or two steps further and get a little more speculative, we have autonomous software agents which can analyze the performance and cost of an entire tech stack in essentially real time and undertake the research process to identify alternatives and change over any component of that stack. What does that mean for middleware? What does that mean for software sales? What does that mean for consultants who run RFIs like us? What is it? Does that fuel commoditization of products to a greater extent? If our future of work is underpinned by thousands of autonomous agents working directly with other autonomous agents, what does that mean for the role of humans and how we build our systems and processes? And so companies are exploring that as well. And that's a lot of what we're seeing in the startup space is people attempting to build out, test, expand, gain adoption for different components of that potential future ecosystem.
Yeah, and there's a lot to dig into there. But what I would say is it does feel like we're kind of at this, critical mass point. And you're starting to see the development of this technology, these solutions to, effectively look like a bit of an arms race, right? You've got OpenAI, Google, Meta, and some legacy companies. Obviously, IBM has been doing this forever and to some degree, investing heavily, though, in this AI capability. And I guess, just as someone who's looking at this day in and day out, as someone who's invested a lot of time in this, do you feel like there's an eventual winner here in this particular race? Do you see something else in terms of consolidation? I'm just curious, kind of, if you could look, a couple of years out, what that looks like to you.
It's definitely a race. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. It's too early to say, really, for which of these entities might come out on top. And as far as consolidation, do we have them joining together? I expect probably to some extent, but if the tools continue to exist in their current form as sort of standalone assistants, which they'll probably evolve, but something comparable enough to the ChatGPT equivalents of today will likely still exist into the future. But you might have a variety of sort of pre-trained, pre-specialized models for different things, and another model over top of them that helps to route queries, combine answers, so on and so forth, just limited by sort of what ends up being efficient and effective with the compute costs and the infrastructure of it. And as far as like what does that offering look like and who owns it, it's really just too early to say. There is an interesting question around open source, which I would say until even just this month, maybe open source wasn't something that was being talked about as much. But there have been a lot of advances. Facebook, Meta released a model into the open source community month or two back. And the open source community has made tremendous strides with that and with other models, not just for things like Stable Diffusion, where it's image-based AI and creative endeavors, but also for things that are more or less intended to mimic and directly compete with Bard, ChatGPT, GPT-4, Anthropic's Claude, and products like that, and making a lot of, I would say, unexpected advances in the sort of scale and the underlying infrastructure and economics of some of these models, I would say, and achieving surprising performance. Right. I think
Right.
As of December, everyone really thought that OpenAI had kind of a secret sauce that wouldn't be easy for anyone to emulate or really catch up to. And Google's sort of rushed release of Bard just reinforced that perception, I think.
Sure.
And so having the open source community create surprisingly good, inexpensive, locally trainable models that can are advancing at a pace that implies the potential to seriously compete with some of these massive tech giant models with decades of AI expertise behind them, is a really interesting development. If the future of AI is open source, that may be a very different sort of world, for at least from a monetization and business perspective. And one other thing I'll add here is that while it's too early to call a winner in the AI arms race, I can say that the chip companies like AMD, NVIDIA, and Intel are winners regardless. This boom in AI is going to mean demand for specialized chips to run it all. And as the people who make the hardware, they're in a really good spot.
That's an interesting point. Okay, so to summarize, we basically say officially the race is too close to call, but that the open source piece will actually be something to really keep an eye on, and just watch how that develops, as historically it has in other solutions. So that's super helpful. So let's take a step back, maybe, right, and help our listeners understand, kind of in the simplest terms possible, how that ChatGPT, the large language models technology, works and its reliability. Can you kind of help us through that process, Connor, and talk a little bit about just the secret sauce behind it?
Yeah. So in a sentence, taken to the simplest possible, you can think of it as next word prediction taken to an extreme. So when you're using when you're texting and your phone suggests the next word in your sentence uh, as an assistive measure. Um, it's the same sort of idea for what large language models are doing. They're just doing it with uh, a huge neural net in the back end, which is pre-trained with sophisticated methods on a massive amount of data to be able to predict what it should say for a tremendous variety of domains. To answer questions, to take on a role and supply answers in that context, to generate fiction, to summarize data. It's all based on this sort of deceptively simple idea, and then this is an oversimplification inevitably, but that's kind of the core idea of it. Taking a little bit of a deeper look here. Um, the when you run models through a lot of text data, um, you're teaching them something about the underlying data set, um, and given enough curated context and adjustment to the neural net via human input, and basically saying which answer is better for a given query, you can end up with capabilities that kind of surprised everyone a little bit. Um, you know, this sort of neural net has been around for a while. It's not a new architecture, but the abilities that these models have shown at scale and with the particular type of training that's being done, reinforcement learning from human feedback. But the ability that these models have shown to do things like extrapolate beyond their data set, not by a lot usually, but by a little bit. The sort of a glimmer of generalization outside of the training data um, is part of what's so impressive and so exciting about this. Is the ability to sort of mix and match contexts and to extrapolate past in certain domains and for certain tasks into something that we would say more closely approximates true human creativity.
Right. That's interesting. And it might just be that surprise element is also, part of the reason that ChatGPT and some of these other solutions are kind of having their moment right now. Just as you mentioned, kind of exceeding expectations of, what we knew that it could do. So that's really interesting. I want to talk a little bit more kind of micro, if we can, around how you see these solutions, these AI solutions benefiting our clients, banks, credit unions, leaders in that space, technology, operations, and folks that are frankly already challenged with the weight of digital transformation and managing that process. I know this is part of the talk you gave the other week, and I was just curious if you could share with our listeners, some of the opportunities there, as well as some of the use cases that you've seen that have wide potential.
Sure. So I guess the first thing I'll say, as far as how large language models and this technology can help FIs do things that they're already trying to do today, a lot of it is in improvements to a wide variety of tasks by a small amount. Assistive automation that's pretty much just what you can get out of the box using free or very cheaply licensed tools like ChatGPT to make drafting and email easier, to draft policies or board reports, to help to summarize content in the knowledge base, to customize marketing outreach. Things which are very much in the wheelhouse of LLMs and are just humans using the tools to do things better and faster and more autonomously.
So are these things that, just sorry to interrupt, Connor, but are these things that they should have already been putting in place, for some time now? Or how do you see that from a kind of opportunity, ease of onboarding and integration? Is this something that could have been already happening?
Absolutely. I mean, could be happening. Yeah, no question. I mean, some of our clients have reported using LLMs for exactly these sorts of use cases. the stance of the financial industry almost always is the sort of conservative, wait and see, maybe not fast follower, maybe kind of medium follower or even slow
Right.
follower on new technologies to make sure that there aren't unknown risks that are going to pop up associated with new tech. But some of the early adopters are already making use of these, and there are other industries which have more or less immediately adopted these, and particularly with large FIs, large institutions, where you have a lot of people and a community of a particular role or department, which work closely with each other, share kind of tips and tricks. Relatively early in the cycle of LLMs hitting and being used for business, I think it was JP Morgan, JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley, one of the two, restricted use of ChatGPT and other LLMs.
Yeah, that's JP Morgan Chase, and I was going to ask you about that too, kind of what your take there was, considering that, some are obviously onboarding in a scalable way and others are, taking a different stance.
Yeah, so my read from the public disclosure there is that the wealth managers at JP Morgan started playing around with ChatGPT and realized how much of their jobs it could do for them, and how much easier it could make knowledge
Right.
search and summarizing and communicating with clients, to just handle a lot of the everyday tasks that didn't need tremendously deep financial expertise, but just needed to be done, or that given the right sort of context and prompt could do what they need to do. But at that point in time, unless it was licensed and being used through the API, that data wasn't private. So anything that was put into ChatGPT at that time was sort of fair game as far as training of the model by OpenAI, so that data is retained in their database.
Sure.
And so the folks the folks at JP Morgan realized that and basically had a temporary lockdown on the LLMs because they didn't want that proprietary data to be making its way out into the world, right? Their innovative, forward-thinking employees had kind of outpaced corporate governance, and they noticed it because the tools were so useful. And there's been news articles that are now even a couple months old about realtors using these tools to automate huge chunks of their job. Jobs that involve a lot of personalized communication, more as a almost primary chunk of time, have seen a lot of opportunity and a lot of impact from these tools already. And so that's sort of the use cases where, financial institutions could have moved on this in December of last year, and it's been 5 months, and things are kind of only accelerating and expanding and getting more interesting. Now, as far as sort of more enterprise use of AI, which is what JP Morgan is doing now, and their reaction basically was, okay, we'll stop using the free tool because we can't enforce consistency on it, and there are risks associated with it. But here we'll build our own in-house use case for, we'll bring this in-house and build our own version.
Right. And manage our data appropriately. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it going from something which is a generalized tool, which can do a surprisingly good job at being a wealth management advisor, to a specialized tool that specifically is using the institutional knowledge that a firm like JP Morgan has to do that job even better and do it more consistently by implementing a custom in-house use case. And so, and that sort of thing where you are fine-tuning a model or where you are building an application on top of GPT or some of these other solutions, that tends to look more like a traditional IT project in terms of the expertise and know-how and resourcing that you have to apply to that problem. And so, that's the sort of project that smaller FIs may want to wait more on. I mean, it's hard to say in this case, like how much first mover advantage there is. Certainly, there's a lot of, there's hundreds of startups that are working on making tools built on top of the LLM architecture, which are able to deliver services and value in a more turnkey sort of way to a wide variety of industries. Where today most of those are still fairly nascent. Most of those sort of turnkey solutions aren't at the level of maturity that most FIs would be comfortable with. So, I hesitate to say, hold off on doing that sort of enterprise implementation. There is a possibility that some vendor tool or some existing vendor even might integrate capabilities that you'll be able to use more out of the box, and that it'll be able to be done sort of for you, and you can just license it. But also experience with this sort of project and experience doing this kind of thing is likely to have its own value in the future. The first step of any custom AI project is pretty much always getting your data house in order, so to speak, and making sure that your data is well organized, that you have the appropriate storage, that if it's going to be used for applications like machine learning, that you have the right tagging on it, the right metadata. It's consistent. You have historical trends. There aren't disjointed databases or systems. And that's work that, a lot of FIs, even a lot of big FIs, really haven't done well enough. And so it's something that in as part of digital modernization, as part of just projects that we were already seeing before the advent of LLMs, that's something that a lot of institutions were already pursuing, already thinking about, or was already on their roadmap. And AI is just another kind of incentive on top of that to get that done. So, those are the two considerations that I would put out as far as doing something that is customized for your institution, is that the experience of doing the project and things you'll have to do to get it done will have strong benefits into the future for likely a lot of future AI developments, product services, as well as just overall use of data. But that there may be some more turnkey tools that are coming out in next year, or that are even already out but immature, that might let you get some of the benefits while skipping over some of that work.
Sure.
And then the other half is just from a using the tools that are out there for assistive automation. There isn't really a use. There isn't a reason not to be doing that today.
Right. So clearly there's a proper sequence to all this, and one of the things that you've mentioned before when we've talked about this, and maybe you can just kind of provide a little bit of perspective on this, is the fact that a lot of times the companies that are thinking about integrating this are focused on the technology itself, but there's a human resources element to this that really has to be part of the focus and the build. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a few pieces. One is in the sort of governance and controls perspective of how do you make sure that your people know enough about the tools, their strengths and their limitations, to be making effective use of them, and to not be risking data leaks, or to be putting too much faith in them and resulting in biases manifesting in your business environment, or other issues. So there's a level of kind of education, understanding, and policy and oversight that needs to be in place for that. And as with any effort that involves automation, particularly any highly visible automation technology like this, where it's in the news, there's a lot of anxiety about it. Doing the change management and communication effort to clarify kind of what this means for employees, like how exactly is this going to be implemented, what is it going to be used for, what does this mean for the day-to-day of employees, giving them enough sort of familiarity and understanding so it's not just empty words. So that there isn't the fear and the rumor mill of who's going to get replaced by ChatGPT today. And really the reality here is that it's pretty rare for an entire position to be fully replaced by LMs or by other automation tools. Looking back at
Right.
things like robotic process automation or intelligent automation, most roles today have enough components of different sorts of work, of decision making and communication, that automating them end to end is it's rare, right? It's much more
Right.
common that you are automating a piece of someone's job, and most often it's a piece of their job that they're not particularly fond of doing. It's the rote task, it's the data cleaning, it's
Right.
the report generation, and so when people understand that this is probably going to get rid of my least favorite part of my day, they tend to be much more enthusiastic about it.
Sure.
And
Well, this is a situation too where, this is an example where jobs evolve, right? So I think you shared some data last week, just talking about, some statistics on companies looking to hire engineers and people who are experienced with these types of tools. I think the number was something like 29% of companies were looking to hire prompt engineers this year. Were you surprised by those numbers?
um, yes and no, a little bit. Um, Prompt engineering, I guess I should level set, is uh, making advanced use of large language models as they are today out of the box, without fine tuning, just through being more precise and more scientific in how you are interacting with them. I guess you could think of it a bit like a developer, like a SQL developer who is used to working with databases, but or the super user of a particular tool, who's just able to get more out of the tool due to their knowledge with how to interact with it, than the average user. And having 30% of companies looking to hire prompt engineers this year, uh, I'm not surprised maybe that a lot of companies don't really know what to do with this and are just kind of looking for what expertise they can find, and the expertise they can find is people putting prompt engineer on their resume. Even though, I'm sure if you look at if you look at like the Google sense, like the frequency of search on the term prompt engineer, there's probably like nothing prior to
Gotcha.
December, maybe even prior to like April of this year. It's incredibly new, right? If someone says they're a prompt engineer with a year of experience, they are uh, they're probably translating some previous experience, which is definitely not prompt engineering as we know it today, into doing that sort of work. And by the same token, if a company is looking for prompt engineers with a year of experience, they're going to be very disappointed. So I'm not too surprised that there's kind of this bandwagoning. I do question if perhaps these companies have not all considered if they, do they need that level of expertise? Um,
Right.
do they need to have prompt engineers? Is that going to be the right hire for them? What are they expecting those people to do within their organization? Are they expecting them to lead this change program and basically like roll out use of LLMs at their organization for everyone? Are they looking for them to try to tackle specific higher value use cases? I think it's something that may be a little bit under considered on the part of many companies, that are I think more afraid of being left behind than anything else.
Right.
And I think that sort of bears out in some of the other statistics around, 65, 66% of companies believe that hiring ChatGPT experienced workers gives their company a competitive edge. And for a lot of industries, I think that is true. Having your workforce able to use these tools effectively is going to benefit you and let you be more efficient. But just sort of doing that without a plan for it, or understanding what is the value going to be for the organization? How are you going to make use of it? How does this fit into the sort of broader adoption that you're doing? They'll tend to realize probably less value than they're hoping for without understanding those things. But I mean, some of this is trying to get out far in front of it. It's sort of an attitude of
Right.
let's start the hiring pipeline now because these resources are scarce, and by the time we get one in, we'll have figured out what to do with them. Um, so, hopefully
Right.
that works out for folks.
Or potentially they could recruit and lead a team as well if need be, and it's no longer the centralized headache that it could be. So that's an interesting take there, and thanks for covering off on that. I think we've covered a lot of stuff so far, but one question I had for you, and maybe we can kind of bring it back around here, is that as interesting as AI is, and it's obviously this popularity, this groundswell, it seems to be very polarizing. There are a lot of fears related to the widespread use of AI. We just saw that a longtime innovator in AI, Connor Heaton, had left Google to speak about the dangers that he sees in AI. So I'm just curious what your take on this is, and does it change kind of the outlook from a professional standpoint?
Sure. So the I guess, and this is its own rabbit hole, really. But
Sure, I totally get that. So feel free just to, put a very broad answer on this one. No worries.
yeah, there have been groups which are very interested and dedicated in sort of the potential and the risks of AI, specifically, fully generalized human capable AI. And what that means for humanity from a sort of existential risk perspective, and then what we do about that, getting into if we have a human or greater intelligence level AI, is there a way that we can keep them aligned with human values? And that's its own entire problem. There are research organizations dedicated to trying to figure that sort of thing out, and there have been since well before the rise of large language models. And the I guess to sort of sketch out the thinking, because I know without a little bit of an example, this sort of thing can just kind of slide off. Um, uh, to give an example of sort of what the thinking is here. So the idea is progress is accelerating, right? So if you have exponentially accelerating progress in AI, if you're having breakthroughs, if you're getting much faster processing speeds that are already sort of well beyond human capabilities in terms of things like data storage and retrieval, processing speed, automation, parallelism, ability of software to replicate. And so the idea is if we end up creating an AI that has a human intelligence that in a general sort of way, right, where it has a theory of mind, it understands the world, it understands what how it interacts in itself, then such a thing would have the capability, so goes the theory, to improve itself tremendously quickly, right? Double or triple sort of exponential curve, and that would give that sort of entity just tremendous power effectively overnight, right? At a scale that's faster than humans have any real hope of keeping up with. And so there's this worry in amongst various communities of AI risk and AI researchers, that if we aren't able to solve the problem of alignment of how can we keep an AI entity aligned with human values, that it could potentially mean the end of the human race effectively. And a classic parable in this area is, or that's sort of thrown around to describe this, is a paperclip optimizer. So if you suppose that for whatever reason a company that produces paperclips is the first to develop general AI, and it has the resources to improve itself. Maybe it makes savvy stock market investments and gains a lot of resources, but its utility function, what it was built to do, is just make more paper clips. And the parable goes, so it basically stays in line with human values for a while because that lets it make more paper clips. But as soon as it's gained kind of enough resources and capabilities, it no longer makes sense to continue to serve human interests and instead just makes paper clips at the expense of humanity, the world, and eventually, broader solar system, et cetera. The idea of just if the only thing a highly capable entity cares about is maximizing profit or producing paper clips, if that value function it doesn't match what humans want, then humans sort of as an afterthought are just sort of a casualty of that, almost by accident. So it's kind of a silly thought experiment, but it's one of the ways that people discuss sort of non-human intelligence and what that may mean for the species. And on the opposite end of things, there's sort of the AI utopia school of thought of, well, if we have aligned super intelligent agents, that may help us cure cancer, that may help us eliminate scarcity, produce better policy and governance that benefits humanity more broadly instead of concentrating power and wealth in the hands of the few. Like there's potential and there's risk here. And it may sound kind of hyperbolic to talk about, but one of the relevant statistics here is something like 50% of AI researchers, professional AI researchers, believe that there's a 10% or greater chance that the development of general AI, of super intelligent AI, could result in human extinction. So, some very smart people take this very seriously.
Sure.
And while so the Overton window around this of like how okay it is for sober buttoned up people to discuss it is widening. That's why you see personalities like Elon Musk talking about it. Why you have Jeffrey Hinton expressing concern and leaving Google to be able to talk more about this and engage more on the risks and controls side of things. So that's really the something of a long answer to a short question, but as I said, it's a very deep rabbit hole of thinking on this, and it has been for far longer than large language models have been around.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating and obviously something that, is going to continue to evolve. And I know that was not an easy question to try to get into, but certainly, just trying to understand the kind of risk reward scenarios is helpful. And I think we'll be able to, I think we're just scratching the surface on this as it relates to what we can share with our listeners here. So hope that we can have you back on again. So certainly appreciate the time, Connor. And I would encourage anyone who's interested in this topic of AI, large language models, to reach out and connect with Connor on LinkedIn. Be sure to read his pieces on our SRM blog, The Bottom Line. And I hope you'll join us again on the podcast. And thanks for listening, everybody. And bye for now. And Connor, thank you again.
Thanks so much, Neil.
Take care. Thanks for listening to Firmer Ground from SRM. Please stay tuned for our upcoming podcast. And until then, you can visit us at srmcorp.com or on LinkedIn and Twitter.